My aunt looked me in the eye, called me disgusting, and handed me a glass of poison disguised as a diet drink because she wants my $50 million trust fund. I am currently hiding in the locked bathroom of our estate in the Hamptons, shaking uncontrollably, because I just realized the woman who raised me has been gaslighting me into insanity for 2 years. To the public, Aunt Lydia is a saint who took in her orphan niece, but beneath the designer clothes and the charity galas, she is a monster who plans to lock me away in a facility forever. I just found the papers in her safe, and the truth is worse than death. She is not only stealing my fortune, but she is also planning to sell her own daughter to a predator just to cover her secret gambling debts. I feel like my chest is going to explode from the betrayal. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was broken, but it was all her design to erase me. Now, I have a choice. I can run and lose everything, or I can stay and become something far colder and crueler than she ever imagined to take her down. I have the evidence to burn her kingdom to the ground, but I am terrified that if I cross this line, I will never be able to come back. Tell me, is it worth losing your soul to get revenge on the devil herself? My name is Celeste Vance. I am 19 years old, and on paper, I am one of the luckiest girls in America. I am the sole heiress to the Vance Enterprises empire, a conglomerate built on real estate and pharmaceuticals that my father spent his life expanding. My net worth sits somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million, held safely in a trust fund that I was supposed to access on my 21st birthday. I live in East Hampton, in a sprawling oceanfront estate that smells of sea salt and old money, a place where the hedges are trimmed with laser precision, and the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical weight on your chest. To the outside world, I am a tragic figure, a delicate porcelain doll who lost both parents in a horrific car accident 2 years ago on the Long Island Expressway. They say I am fragile. They say I am lucky to have my Aunt Lydia, my father's younger sister, to step in as my legal guardian. They see her guiding me through the grief, managing the estate, and protecting me from the vultures of the world. But they do not see what happens when the heavy oak doors close. They do not hear the way the air changes when Lydia walks into a room. It was a Tuesday in mid-July. The heat was oppressive. A thick, humid blanket that settled over the manicured lawns of the Hamptons. I was sitting by the infinity pool with my cousin Mia. Mia is 18, just a year younger than me, but she carries the weight of the world in her shoulders. She is soft, in every sense of the word. Her heart is soft, her voice is soft, and her body is soft. She has never fit into the rigid, size 0 mold that her mother worships. Mia was sitting on the edge of the pool, her legs dangling in the turquoise water. She was pinching the skin around her waist, her eyes filled with tears. "Do you think I look disgusting, Celeste?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The boys at the club, Sayuting Haling. Tuhash is greater than I heard them laughing when I walked by the cabana. I looked at her, my heart aching. Mia was beautiful in a way that Renaissance painters would have adored. But in 21st century high society, she was treated like a mistake. "You are not disgusting, Mia," I said, reaching out to touch her shoulder. "You are healthy. You are real. Those boys are idiots who live off their father's credit cards. Do not let them define you." I meant every word. But as I spoke, I felt a shadow fall over us. It was not a cloud passing over the sun. It was her. Aunt Lydia stood on the patio, framed by the French doors like a goddess descending from Olympus. At 45, she was a medical marvel. Her skin was pulled tight, smooth as marble, the result of quarterly trips to a private clinic in Switzerland. She wore a white linen caftan that floated around her skeletal frame, and her eyes, hidden behind oversized designer sunglasses, were scanning us like a predator scanning a herd for the weakest link. She did not walk. She glided. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the stone tiles. A countdown to disaster. She stopped right behind Mia, looking down at us with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, my poor, sweet girls," Lydia cooed. Her voice was like honey laced with arsenic. I could not help but overhear. "Celeste, darling, lying to your cousin is not kindness. It is cruelty." I felt my stomach tighten. "Here we go. I am not lying, Aunt Lydia," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my hands began to tremble slightly under the towel. "Mia looks fine." Lydia let out a short, sharp laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. "Fine? Is that the standard for a Vance?" She reached down and poked Mia's side with a manicured finger. The nail dug in, just enough to hurt. "This is not fine, Celeste. This is sloth. This is a lack of discipline. And you, Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, are Jinghao Dayu." She turned her gaze to me. I instinctively sat up straighter, sucking in my stomach. I was thin, borderline underweight due to the stress of the accident and the grief. But under Lydia's microscope, I always felt massive. "You are looking bloated, Celeste," she declared, tilting her head as if inspecting a piece of livestock. "Your face is puffy. Have you been sneaking carbohydrates? You know what the doctor said about your constitution. You are prone to 少于静好, lean. 2# is greater than heaviness. Just like your mother was in her later years." That was a lie. My mother was effortlessly graceful until the day she died. But I said nothing. I had learned that arguing with Lydia was like fighting a rip current. It only exhausted you before you drowned. "I have just been drinking water, Aunt Lydia," I murmured. "Water retains salt if your system is sluggish." She countered instantly. "This is exactly why I had to fire the cook. She was poisoning you both with butter and cream. From now on, things are going to change." She clapped her hands, a sharp sound that echoed across the pool deck. A new maid, a woman I did not recognize with cold, hard eyes, stepped forward holding a tray with 2 tall glasses of thick, green sludge, celery juice. Lydia announced, beaming as if she were offering us champagne. "Pure, organic celery juice. No sugars, no fibers. It will flush the toxins out of your systems. We are starting a cleanse today. Both of you, we have the charity gala for the Children's Hospital coming up in 3 weeks. And I will not have my daughter and my niece looking like swollen ticks in their gowns." Mia looked at the green liquid with horror. "Mom, please. I have not eaten since breakfast. I feel dizzy." Lydia's smile vanished. The mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second, revealing the steel beneath. Hunger is just the feeling of fat leaving the body. "Mia, drink it." Now, Mia took the glass, her hands shaking, and choked it down. I took mine, the smell of raw vegetable making my stomach turn. I looked at Lydia. She was watching me with an intensity that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was not just about weight, it was about control. I raised the glass to my lips. The liquid was bitter, metallic. "Good girl," Lydia purred, stroking my hair. Her hand felt cold against my scalp. "You know, I only want what is best for you, Celeste. With your parents gone, I am the only one who truly cares about your future. You have to trust me. Your mind, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than it has been so fragile lately. We need to purify your body to heal your mind. I drank it all. I had to. If I did not, the consequences would be psychological warfare that could last for days. But as I lowered the empty glass, I caught a glimpse of something in Lydia's hand. It was a small, orange prescription bottle she was slipping back into the pocket of her kaftan. She saw me looking and patted the pocket nonchalantly. Just my vitamins. Darling, she said, flashing a dazzling, perfect smile. Now, rest. You will need your energy. I have scheduled a private trainer for you both at 5 in the morning. She turned and walked back into the house, the white linen flowing behind her. I sat there, the taste of celery and dread in my mouth. My intuition, buried under layers of trauma and medication, was screaming at me. Why did she need to hide vitamins? Why was she suddenly obsessed with my weight when I was already a size 2? And why did she keep mentioning my fragile mind to anyone who would listen? Even when I felt perfectly lucid, I looked at Mia, who was wiping tears from her cheeks. The sun was shining, the ocean was sparkling, and we were trapped in a paradise that was slowly starting to feel like a prison cell. This was not love. This was ownership. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt a spark of something other than grief. I felt suspicion. The next 3 days passed in a blur of green liquid and white ceilings. I felt as though I were moving underwater, my limbs heavy and my thoughts drifting just out of reach. The clarity I had felt by the pool, that sudden spark of suspicion, was being systematically smothered under a blanket of chemical lethargy. I woke up on Friday morning with a dry mouth and a pounding headache. The digital clock on my bedside table read 11 in the morning. I had slept for 14 hours, yet I felt exhausted. I dragged myself out of bed, my legs trembling as I walked to the bathroom. In the mirror, my reflection looked pale and gaunt. The circles under my eyes were dark purple bruises against my skin. I went downstairs, hoping to find Mrs. Higgins in the kitchen. Mrs. Higgins had been our housekeeper and cook since I was 5 years old. She was a warm, round woman who smelled of yeast and vanilla, and she was the only person left in this house who looked at me with genuine affection. I needed her. I needed her to tell me that I was not crazy, that this diet was ridiculous, and that she would sneak me a grilled cheese sandwich when Lydia was not looking. But when I pushed open the swinging door to the kitchen, the air was cold and sterile. Mrs. Higgins was not there. Instead, a tall, severe woman with hair pulled back in a tight bun was wiping down the granite countertops. She looked up at me with zero recognition. "Excuse me," I said, my voice raspy. "Where is Mrs. Higgins?" The woman did not stop wiping. "Miss Vance let her go yesterday. She said her services were no longer required. I am Greta. I will be managing the household staff from now on." My stomach dropped. Let her go? Mrs. Higgins was family. She would never just leave without saying goodbye to me. "Why?" I asked, gripping the doorframe. Why was she fired? Greta finally stopped and looked at me. Her eyes were devoid of sympathy. "Miss Vance said she was enabling your unhealthy habits. It was for your own good. Now, sit. Your juice is ready." She pointed to the island where a glass of the familiar green sludge sat waiting. Next to it was a small porcelain dish containing 2 pills. One was a multivitamin I recognized. The other was a small, oblong blue pill I had never seen before. I stared at the blue pill. A cold shiver of fear ran down my spine. Just then, Lydia breezed into the kitchen. She looked radiant, wearing a tennis outfit that cost more than most people's cars. She kissed me on the cheek, leaving a smear of expensive lipstick and the scent of Chanel No. 5. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she chirped. "Greta, thank you. Celeste, drink up. We have a busy day. The florist is coming to discuss the arrangements for the gala." "Aunt Lydia," I said, ignoring the juice. "Where is Mrs. Higgins? You can not just fire her. She has been with us for 14 years. Lydia Seahill, a dramatic exhalation that suggested I was being incredibly difficult. "Celeste, darling, please do not start. Mrs. Higgins was stealing silverware. I caught her red-handed. I did not want to upset you with the details because of your condition, but you leave me no choice." "Stealing?" I repeated. "That is a lie. Mrs. Higgins would never steal." Lydia's eyes hardened instantly. "Are you calling me a liar, Celeste? After everything I do for you?" "This is exactly what Dr. Evans was talking about. Your paranoia is getting worse. It is the grief. I know, but you really must try to control it." She picked up the blue pill and pressed it into my palm. "Take this," she commanded softly. "It is a new metabolic booster Dr. Evans prescribed. It will help clear that brain fog you are struggling with." I looked at the pill. I did not want to take it, but Lydia was watching. Greta was watching, and I felt small and powerless in my own kitchen. I swallowed the pill with the juice, the bitter taste making me gag. Within 20 minutes, the fog in my head thickened. I felt compliant. I felt numb. Later that afternoon, while Lydia was in the garden shouting at the landscapers, I slipped into the library. I needed to hear a sane voice. I needed to speak to Mr. Henderson, my father's longtime attorney. He was the executor of the trust until I turned 21. If anyone could tell me what was happening, it was him. I picked up the heavy landline receiver and dialed his office number from memory. My fingers felt clumsy. "Vance Legal." A receptionist answered. "This is Celeste Vance," I whispered, keeping an eye on the door. "I need to speak to Mr. Henderson immediately." There was a pause. "Oh, Miss Vance, please hold." I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. Finally, a voice came on the line, but it was not Mr. Henderson. "Celeste?" It was Lydia. Her voice was coming from the extension in the sunroom. "Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. Zwei Raute ist größer als I froze. Who are you trying to call?" "Darling?" Lydia asked. Her tone was terrifyingly calm. Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than I wanted to ask Mr. Henderson about the trust fund statement. I stammered. "I have not received it this month." There was a sigh on the other end of the line. "Celeste, you know you are not supposed to worry about business. Mr. Henderson and I handled that last week. Do you not remember?" I frowned, trying to push through the chemical haze in my brain. "No, I did not talk to him." "Yes, you did," Lydia said firmly. "You signed the authorization papers on Tuesday. You were very emotional. You were crying about your parents. You said you could not handle the pressure of the estate and you wanted me to take over the daily operations." I gripped the phone tighter. "No, that never happened. I would remember signing away my rights." "Lydia," I said, my voice trembling, "I never signed anything like that. I want to see the papers." The line went silent for a moment. Then, I heard the sound of heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood floor. A moment later, the library door flew open. Lydia stood there, phone in hand, looking at me with an expression of deep pity. She hung up the phone and walked over to me, placing her hands on my shoulders. Celeste, look at me, she said gently. You do not remember because you were having an episode. The accident, Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2# is greater than the doctors warned us about this. The trauma to your frontal lobe, it causes memory gaps. You signed the papers. Celeste, you begged me to help you. She squeezed my shoulders, her nails digging in. I stared at her. Her face was a mask of concern, but her eyes were cold. Calculating sharks swimming in blue water. For a second, I almost believed her. My head was spinning. Had I forgotten? Was I losing my mind? The blue pill was making it so hard to think straight. No, my inner voice whispered, faint but stubborn. She is lying, but I could not say it. I did not have the strength. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2# is greater than I am tired. Aunt Lydia, I managed to say, of course you are. She soothed, guiding me toward the door. Go upstairs. Greta will bring you your evening vitamins. Rest, darling. Let me do the thinking for you. As I walked up the grand staircase, I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I was a prisoner in my own home, trapped not by bars, but by pills and lies. And the terrifying part was, I was starting to forget where the lies ended and my reality began. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 3 times. 3 in the morning, the witching hour. I lay in bed, my body rigid under the Egyptian cotton sheets. My tongue was still bitter, a lingering reminder of the blue pill I had pretended to swallow 5 hours ago. I had hidden it under my tongue, a trick I learned from a movie about an asylum, and spat it into the toilet the moment Greta left the room. It was a small rebellion, but it was the only weapon I had. Without the sedative coursing through my veins, my mind was terrifyingly clear. The silence of the house was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows of the tree branches dance like skeletal fingers. I have to know, I told myself. My inner voice sounded different tonight. It was less like a frightened child and more like the daughter of Richard Vance. I threw off the covers. My legs felt weak, a side effect of the starvation diet Lydia called a cleanse. But my adrenaline was surging. I dressed in black leggings and a dark hoodie, moving as silently as a ghost. I slipped my smartphone into my pocket. If I found something, I needed proof. I opened my bedroom door. The hallway was a cavern of darkness. The only light came from the moonlight spilling through the high windows at the end of the corridor. I crept past Lydia's suite. I could hear the faint hum of her white noise machine. She was sleeping the sleep of the righteous, or the sociopathic. My destination was the basement. Specifically, my father's old study. Lydia had declared it off limits the week after the funeral, claiming the memories were too painful for me. She had locked the heavy oak door and claimed she lost the key. But I knew my father. He was a creature of habit, and he always kept a spare key taped beneath the 3rd drawer of the antique hallway console table. Just outside the study door, I descended the stairs, skipping the 4th step because it always creaked. When I reached the basement level, the air was cooler, smelling of cedar and old paper. I approached the console table, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might wake the house. Please be there, I whispered. I reached under the drawer. My fingers brushed against rough wood. And then, the cool, smooth metal of a key. Tears pricked my eyes. It was a small victory, but it felt like a triumph. I unlocked the door. The mechanism clicked softly, a sound that seemed deafening in the silence. I pushed the door open and slipped inside, closing it gently behind me before turning on the flashlight on my phone. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing a room that had been transformed. My father's warm, chaotic workspace was gone. The mahogany desk was buried under stacks of modern architectural blueprints and legal boxes. The leather armchairs where he used to read me stories were covered in dust sheets. I walked toward the desk. My hands were shaking. I began to sift through the papers on top. Most of it was mundane. Invoices for the pool maintenance, receipts for Lydia's designer wardrobe, bills for the gala. Then I saw a long, black tube leaning against the bookshelf. It bore the seal of a prominent architectural firm in New York City. I pulled the cap off and slid the rolled papers out, spreading them across the desk. Saoudzinghao Ling. Dos numeral es mayor que. I gasped. The title block in the corner read, The Vance Coastal Resort and Casino. I traced the lines with my finger. It was a monstrosity, a sprawling complex of glass and steel, designed to be built right over the nature preserve my father had spent 20 years protecting. The plans showed the demolition of the community center and the low-income housing units on the edge of our property. He hated gambling. I thought, fury rising in my chest. He called it a tax on the poor. He would never have approved this. The date on the blueprints was 3 months ago. Lydia had commissioned this while pretending to mourn him. She was going to destroy his legacy and turn our family name into a brand for cheap entertainment. But this was just greed. Greed, I could understand. Greed was simple. What I found next was not simple. It was evil. I opened the top drawer of the desk. It was locked, but the wood was old and warped. I grabbed a letter opener from the desktop and wedged it into the crack, prying it open with a snap. Inside, there was a single, thick red folder. The label on the front was typed in bold capital letters. Confidential, Celeste Vance. Medical and legal. I opened it. The first page was a psychiatric evaluation. Patient name, Celeste Marie Vance. Age, 19. Diagnosis, bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features. Severe paranoid delusions. History of self-harm and substance abuse. I stared at the words, my breath catching in my throat. I had never been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I had anxiety. Yes, I had grief. But psychosis? Delusions? I looked at the signature at the bottom. Dr. Aris Thorne. I had never met a Dr. Thorne in my life. The dates of the sessions were listed as every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months. Lies. I hissed. These are all lies. I flipped the page. There was a log of incidents, all fabricated. August 12th. Patient found screaming at unseen entities in the garden. August 15th. Patient attempted to set fire to the library drapes. August 20th. Patient assaulted legal guardian. Lydia Vance. During a manic episode, my hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped the folder. I had never done any of these things. On August 15th, I had been in bed with a migraine. On August 20th, I had spent the day painting in the sunroom with Mia. Why? Why would she create this? The answer was on the final document in the folder. It was a legal petition filed with the New York Family Court. Petition for permanent conservatorship. It outlined the request for Lydia Vance to be granted full, permanent legal control over the person and estate of Celeste Vance due to mental incapacitation. It stated that I was a danger to myself and others, and that I lacked the cognitive ability to manage my own finances or make medical decisions. There was a note clipped to the back of the petition, handwritten in Lydia's elegant, looping script. It was addressed to Mr. Stone, the family attorney, or rather, Lydia's attorney now, Stone. Make sure Judge Miller gets this before the hearing next month. I have increased the dosage of the sedatives as discussed. By the time she stands in front of the judge, she will be drooling and incoherent. The casino deal cannot move forward without her signature or her incapacitation. Get it done. Sao Yu Ting Haling. Ikyu. La. I dropped the folder. It hit the desk with a heavy thap. The room seemed to spin. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. The air felt thin, insufficient to fill my lungs. It was not just about the money. It was about my life. She was not just trying to steal my inheritance. She was trying to erase me. She was systematically poisoning me, gaslighting me, and documenting a madness that she was manufacturing. She intended to lock me away in some facility, medicated into oblivion. While she bulldozed my father's legacy and spent my fortune, I felt a wave of nausea. The celery juice, the vitamins, the blue pills. She had been poisoning me for weeks, maybe months, and I had thanked her. I had hugged her and thanked her for taking care of me. You stupid girl. I thought, the self-hatred burning hot. You let the fox into the hen house and gave her the key. But then, the fear began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard knot in the center of my chest. It was a sensation I had never felt before. It was the death of my innocence. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady now. I turned off the flash and began to photograph every single page. The blueprints, the fake diagnosis, the log of lies, the handwritten note to Stone. I checked the photos. They were clear. I uploaded them immediately to a cloud server my father had set up for me years ago. A private server Lydia knew nothing about. I put the papers back exactly as I had found them. I closed the drawer, pushing the warped wood back into place. I rolled up the blueprints and leaned the tube against the bookshelf. I turned off the flashlight and stood in the darkness of my father's study. I could feel his presence there, in the smell of the old books and the silence. I am sorry, Dad, I whispered into the dark. I am sorry I was weak, but I am not weak anymore. I left the room, locking the door behind me and returning the key to its hiding place. As I climbed the stairs back to the main floor, I felt different. The girl who had walked down these stairs 20 minutes ago was a victim. The woman walking up them was a soldier. Lydia wanted a crazy niece? She wanted a monster? Fine, I thought, my lips curling into a smile that would have terrified the old Celeste. I will give her the performance of a lifetime. The night of the annual Children's Hospital Gala arrived 3 weeks later. The Vance estate had been transformed into a glittering stage for Lydia's grand performance. A massive white marquee tent consumed the south lawn, illuminated by thousands of fairy lights that looked like captured fireflies. A string quartet was playing Mozart near the rose garden, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and grilled lobster. I sat at my vanity table, staring at my reflection. I looked like a ghost haunting my own life. My skin was gray, my eyes were sunken, and my hair, usually thick and glossy, hung in limp strands around my face. Lydia swept into the room without knocking. She was holding a garment bag, her face flushed with the excitement of a general preparing for battle. She wore a stunning emerald gown that hugged her figure perfectly, making her look regal and commanding. Time to get dressed. My darling, she announced, unzipping the bag. I found this in the back of your closet. It is the dress you wore to your sweet 16. I thought it would be sentimental. She pulled out a dress of pale pink taffeta. It was a dress for a child, full of ruffles and excessive bows. It was hideous. Worse, it was a dress I had worn when I was 15 pounds lighter. Before the accident, before the stress eating, before the starvation diet messed up my metabolism. Aunt Lydia, I cannot wear that, I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. It will not fit, and it is. 小静好, Ling. 2 hash is greater than it is a little juvenile. Do you not think? Lydia's smile vanished. Do not be difficult. Celeste, you have nothing else that fits your current size. Unless you want to wear one of my gowns? No, I did not think so. You would drown in them. Put it on. She watched me dress. It was humiliating. The zipper stuck halfway up my back. I had to suck in my breath until my lungs burned just to get it to close. The fabric dug into my ribs and squeezed my chest, pushing my skin up in an unflattering way. The tight sleeves cut into my arms. I looked stuffed. I looked uncomfortable. I looked exactly how she wanted me to look, bloated and messy. See, Lydia said, smoothing a wrinkle on the bodice with a tisk sound. If you had stuck to the juice cleanse properly instead of sneaking food, this would look better. But no matter, you will just have to smile and try not to eat anything tonight. We do not want you popping a seam in front of the senator. She turned to the small table by my bed. A glass of sparkling water sat there, fizzing gently. Here, she said, handing it to me. Drink this. It will settle your stomach. You look anxious. I hesitated. I had not taken the blue pills for days, hiding them in my cheek and spitting them out. I felt clearer, sharper. I reached for the glass, intending to take a sip and pour the rest into the potted fern when she turned around. But she did not turn around. She stood there, watching me with hawk eyes. Drink it all. Celeste, I need to know you are hydrated. I drank it. It tasted slightly bitter, masked by the carbonation. Panic flared in my chest. This was not just water. Within 10 minutes, the room began to tilt. This was not the slow fog of the pills. This was a rapid, aggressive wave of dizziness. My limbs felt heavy, detached from my body. My tongue felt like it had swollen to twice its size. Lydia, I slurred, gripping the vanity table. I feel, 小静好, Ling. 2. Wrong. Lydia checked her diamond watch. Right on schedule. She grabbed my arm, her grip iron hard. Pull yourself together. We are going downstairs. Do not embarrass me. Walking down the grand staircase was a nightmare. My legs felt like rubber. I stumbled on the 3rd step, and Lydia yanked me up, her nails digging into my biceps so hard I knew there would be bruises. To the guests below, it looked like a supportive aunt helping her stumbling niece. To me, it was a death march. We entered the ballroom. 200 faces turned to look at us. The elite of the Hamptons, the people who had known my parents. Look at her. I heard a woman whisper near the entrance. Is that Celeste? She looks dreadful. I heard she is on heavy medication. Another voice murmured, such a shame. The Vance madness finally caught up with her. Lydia guided me through the crowd like a show pony. She stopped to greet the mayor, a stout man with a red face. Mayor Thompson. Lydia beamed. So glad you could make it. You remember my niece, Celeste? The mayor looked at me with thinly veiled pity. Celeste, good to see you out and about. You look, 小静好, Ling. 2 hash is greater than well. I tried to speak. I wanted to say, help me. She is drugging me. She is stealing everything. Help. Xiao Yu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than I managed to croak. My words slurred together into a garbled mess. She. Xiao Yu Jing Hao. Ling. 2 hash is greater than she is. Xiao Yu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than lying. Lydia let out a sad, musical laugh and patted my hand. Oh, darling, you are confused again. The mayor is not lying. He is just saying hello. She leaned in close to the mayor, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper that half the room could hear. I am so sorry. We are adjusting her dosage. She has been having Xiao Yu Jing Haoling, de dièse est supérieur à épisode, hallucinations. It is heartbreaking. No, I shouted. Or I thought I shouted. In reality, it came out as a loud, incoherent moan. I tried to pull away from her, but my heels caught on the hem of the tight pink dress. Xiao Yu Jing Haoling, due cancelletto e maggiore di Eiffel. I hit the marble floor hard. The room spun violently. I looked up and saw a sea of faces staring down at me. Disgust, horror, pity. Lydia was instantly on her knees beside me, playing the role of the martyr perfectly. Celeste. Oh, my poor sweet girl. Someone get some water. She is having an attack. She cradled my head, but her hand was clamped over my mouth, stifling my attempts to speak. I am so sorry. Everyone, Lydia cried out, looking up at the crowd with tear-filled eyes. She did not want to miss the party, but she is clearly not well enough. The addiction, Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than it is a constant battle. Addiction? The word rippled through the crowd like a shock wave. Celeste Vance is an addict? I lay there, paralyzed by the drug and the humiliation. I saw Mrs. Fonder Woodson, my mother's best friend, turn away, shaking her head in disappointment. I saw the judgment in their eyes. Lydia had won. In 5 minutes, she had destroyed 19 years of my reputation. She had painted me as a drug-addled lunatic, and I had played the part perfectly. Get the security. Lydia ordered Greta, who appeared out of nowhere. Help me get her back to her room. We need to lock the door for her own safety. As 2 burly security guards lifted me up, my dress ripped at the shoulder with a loud tear. I hung between them like a rag doll. I looked at Lydia one last time before they dragged me away. She was standing amidst the crowd, accepting a handkerchief from the senator, looking brave and tragic. But as our eyes met, she winked. A single, slow wink. My inner voice, the only part of me that was still awake, screamed in pure, unadulterated rage. Enjoy your party, Aunt Lydia, I thought as the darkness of the hallway swallowed me, because the hangover is going to be brutal. The silence of the room was absolute. I woke up on the floor where the security guards had dumped me, still wearing the torn, pink taffeta dress. My shoulder throbbed where the fabric had cut into my skin, but the physical pain was distant, muted by the cold clarity that was slowly returning to my mind. The heavy dose of sedatives Lydia had forced on me was wearing off, leaving behind a sharp, metallic aftertaste and a headache that felt like a nail being driven into my temple. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest. The room was pitch black, save for a sliver of light coming from beneath the connecting door to Lydia's private sitting room. I crawled toward the light. I did not stand up. I moved on my hands and knees, a wounded animal instinctively seeking cover. As I pressed my ear against the cold wood of the door, I heard the clink of crystal against crystal, a toast to a flawless performance. A male voice said. It was Lawyer Stone. Lydia laughed. A low, throaty sound of triumph. Did you see the look on Judge Miller's face? She was horrified. By Monday morning, that temporary conservatorship will be permanent. The paperwork is already drafted. Celeste will be shipped off to the crumbling facility in upstate New York by Wednesday. I held my breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat in the quiet dark. And the funds? Stone asked. His voice was less celebratory, more urgent. We need access to the liquid assets immediately. Lydia, the sharks in Atlantic City are not going to wait another week. You owe them $7 million. They are talking about breaking kneecaps. I froze. $7 million? My father's estate was vast, but Lydia had managed to gamble away a fortune in secret. The casino project was not an investment. It was a desperate attempt to cover a black hole of debt. Do not worry about the money. Lydia snapped, the ice returning to her tone. Once I have the signature, the land sale goes through. That covers half. The rest, Saoyuting Haling, 2 hashes greater than well. I have found another asset to liquidate. Another asset? Stone asked. Mia. Lydia said. The name hung in the air like a curse. I pressed my face harder against the door, my fingernails digging into the carpet. Mia? Stone sounded confused. What is she worth? She has no trust fund. She has youth. Lydia replied coldly. And she has a womb. I spoke with Mr. Sterling tonight. You know, the real estate developer from Chicago? The one who just turned 60? He is looking for a wife. A young, obedient wife to breed him an heir. He is willing to pay off the remainder of my marker in exchange for an introduction and a guarantee of marriage. I felt bile rise in my throat. Sterling was a man known for his brutality. He had buried 2 wives already. Lydia was selling her own daughter like livestock to settle a gambling debt. But Lydia continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that was even more chilling. There is just one condition. Sterling does not like them. Saoyuting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than heavy. He wants a trophy. I have scheduled Mia for surgery tomorrow morning. A little liposuction. A little tech. We will have her looking market ready by the time the bandages come off. Surgery? Stone chuckled darkly. In a hospital? Do not be stupid. Lydia scoffed. We cannot have a record of it. Dr. Evans knows a private clinic in the Bronx. Cash only. No questions asked. It is cheap, and it is fast. I pulled away from the door, gasping for air. The room felt like it was spinning again. But this time, it was not the drugs. It was the sheer, unadulterated evil of the woman who shared my blood. She was not just a thief. She was a monster. She was going to butcher her own daughter in a back alley clinic and sell her to a predator. A soft click from the hallway door made me freeze. The handle turned slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a silhouette against the dim hallway light. It was Mia. She slipped inside and closed the door quietly. She was holding a damp washcloth and a bottle of water. Her face was swollen, her eyes red and puffy from hours of crying. She looked terrified, a trembling leaf in the middle of a hurricane. Celeste? She whispered into the darkness. Are you awake? Mom thinks you are out cold. I stole the key. I sat up in the shadows. I am awake. Mia rushed over to me, dropping to her knees. She began to wipe the sweat and grime from my face with the cool cloth, her hands shaking uncontrollably. I am so sorry. Celeste, she sobbed. her tears falling onto my arm. I am so sorry I did not help you downstairs. I was so scared, she said. Xiao Yuting howling, 2 hashes greater than she said if I made a scene. She would hurt you. She said I am fat and useless, and this is the only way I can be of value to the family. She thinks she is saving us. Mia whimpered. She says we have to make sacrifices. I looked at my cousin. I looked at the soft curve of her jaw, the terror in her eyes, the bruises on her spirit that were far worse than any physical mark. Lydia had broken her. She had convinced this sweet, gentle girl that she was nothing more than a commodity to be carved up and sold. Something inside me snapped. It was a clean, sharp break. The fear I had been carrying for weeks, the doubt, the confusion, it all evaporated. In its place, something cold and hard took root. It was a rage so profound, it felt like ice water in my veins. Lydia wanted to play games with our lives. She wanted to use my body as a pincushion and Mia's body as a bargaining chip. She thought she was the puppet master. I reached out and took Mia's hand. My grip was strong. My hands were not shaking anymore. Mia, listen to me, I said. My voice was low, devoid of the tremor that had been there for months. You are not going to that clinic tomorrow. You are not marrying Sterling, and we are not making any sacrifices. Mia looked at me, startled by the intensity in my eyes. But Xiao Yuting howling, Dwa, how? She has all the power. She has the lawyers. She has the doctors. We are just Xiao Yuting howling, Kaxi, us. I stood up. The pink taffeta dress was torn and stained, but I wore it like armor now. I walked to the window and looked out at the estate below. The party was over. The lights were out. The world was sleeping, unaware of the war that had just been declared in this bedroom. We have something she does not have, I said, turning back to Mia. We have the truth, and we have nothing left to lose. I walked over to the mirror. The girl staring back at me was no longer the fragile orphan. She was a Vance. And the Vances did not get mad. They got even. She wants a crazy girl. I whispered to my reflection, a cruel smile touching my lips for the first time. Fine, I will be the craziest thing she has ever seen, but I am not going to be the victim in her story. Mia, I am going to be the villain in hers. I turned to Mia, my eyes burning with a dark fire. Stop crying. Mia, we have work to do. By the time the sun comes up, we are going to burn her kingdom to the ground. The sun rose over the Hamptons like a gray bruise spreading across the sky. The air was thick with impending rain, matching the heavy, suffocating atmosphere inside the Vance estate. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the wall. To anyone watching, I was a catatonic girl lost in the fog of medication. Inside, my mind was racing with the precision of a Swiss watch. I had spent the last 3 hours teaching Mia how to breathe. She was in her room down the hall, packing a bag for a surgery she was terrified would kill her. We had a plan, but it required us to walk directly into the fire without flinching. At 8 in the morning, the door opened. Lydia entered, bringing with her the scent of fresh coffee and expensive floral perfume. She was dressed in a sharp navy power suit, ready to finalize the destruction of my life. Greta followed close behind, carrying the inevitable tray of green sludge and pills. Good morning, Celeste, Lydia said briskly, pulling open the curtains to let the harsh lights flood the room. I squinted, letting out a small, pathetic whimper. I needed her to believe I was broken. Aunt Lydia, I croaked, my voice trembling. Please, no more juice. My stomach, sauitenghaling. 2 hash is greater than it hurts so much. Lydia turned to me, her expression one of exaggerated patience. She walked over and sat on the bed, smoothing my hair with a touch that made my skin crawl. It hurts because you are toxic. Darling, she said softly, the toxins are fighting back. But do not worry. Today is a big day. Mr. Stone is coming over with the final papers. Once you sign them, we can get you into that lovely facility upstate. They have much better medicine there. You will sleep all the time. No more pain. She picked up the blue pill from the tray. Open up, she commanded. I opened my mouth like an obedient child. She placed the pill on my tongue. I swallowed the water she offered, expertly tucking the pill into the pocket of my cheek. Thank you, Aunt Lydia, I whispered, letting a tear slide down my face. I just want to sleep. Good girl. Greta will help you get washed. I want you presentable for the signing at noon. As soon as the door clicked shut behind them, I spat the pill into a tissue and flushed it. I waited exactly 3 minutes for their footsteps to fade down the hallway. Then I moved. I did not run. Running was loud. I moved with the fluid, a silent grace of a predator. I slipped into the hallway and made my way to Mia's room. She was sitting on her suitcase, her knuckles white as she gripped the handle. When she saw me, her eyes widened. I cannot do it, Celeste, she hissed, panic rising in her voice. I cannot let them cut me. What if I do not wake up? You will wake up, I said, grabbing her shoulders and staring into her eyes. You are not going to have the surgery, Mia, but you have to get in that car. You have to let them drive you to the clinic. That is the only way we get the location on record. I pulled a small, black device from my pocket. It was a high-definition button camera I had salvaged from my father's old security stash in the basement. I had spent the witching hours sewing it into the collar of Mia's jacket. Wear the jacket, I instructed. Keep the zipper down so the lens is not covered. It is recording now. It has a 12-hour battery. I need you to get Lydia to say it. Mia, I need her to say why she is doing this. Mia took a shaky breath, nodding slowly. She looked terrified, but beneath the fear, I saw a flicker of the anger I had ignited the night before. I will do it, she whispered. For us. I hugged her. A fierce, desperate embrace. Then I slipped out and headed for the lion's den. Lydia's office. I knew Greta was in the kitchen and Lydia was in the shower. I had 10 minutes. I entered the office. It was cold and sterile, dominated by a massive glass desk. I moved quickly to the bookshelf behind the desk. I placed a second camera, hidden inside the spine of a hollowed-out antique book, positioning it so it had a perfect view of the desk and the seating area. Then, I did something risky. I unlocked the window latch just a fraction of an inch. If things went wrong, I needed a way out, or a way for someone else to get in. I was back in my room, sitting in the exact same position on the bed. When Greta came in to dress me, the hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. At noon, the house buzzed with activity. Lawyer Stone arrived, looking slick and reptilian in his gray suit. He was laughing with Lydia in the hallway. Greta marched me downstairs. I wore a simple gray dress that hung loosely on my frame. I made sure to walk with a stumble, keeping my eyes unfocused. They were waiting for me in the library. Lydia sat behind the desk. Stone stood beside her, and a notary public I did not recognize sat in the corner. Celeste. Sit down, Lydia said, gesturing to the chair directly in front of the hidden camera. I sat. The wood of the chair was hard against my spine. Stone slid a stack of documents toward me. These are standard forms. Celeste, Stone said, his voice oily. Just confirming your aunt's guardianship and authorizing the transfer of the estate management. It is for your own protection. I looked at the papers. The words swam before my eyes, but I knew exactly what they said. Permanent conservatorship, power of attorney, liquidation of assets. I picked up the pen. My hand shook violently. I looked up at Lydia, tears welling in my eyes. Aunt Lydia, I whimpered. If I sign this, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than, will you promise not to send me away? I want to stay here. With you? Lydia Seahill, exchanging a look of annoyance with Stone. Celeste, we discussed this. You are sick. The facility is already paid for. Sign the papers. I dropped the pen. It clattered loudly on the desk. Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than I cannot. I sobbed, burying my face in my hands. I do not want to go. Please do not make me go. Lydia slammed her hand on the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Pick up the pen. Celeste, she shouted, losing her composure. Do you have any idea how much money is at stake? Do you have any idea what I have sacrificed for you? This was it. I needed to push her over the edge. You, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than you just want my money. I wailed, rocking back and forth. You spent it all. I know you did. Lydia's face turned a mottled shade of red. She stood up, leaning over the desk, her face inches from mine. You ungrateful little brat, she hissed. Of course I spent it. Who do you think kept this family relevant while your father was busy hugging trees? I deserve every penny. And yes, I am taking it all. The land, the trust, the stocks, because I am the only one who knows how to use it. She grabbed my jaw, forcing me to look at her. Sign the paper, or I swear to God, I will have the doctors lobotomize you instead of just sedating you. Do you understand? I stared at her, wide-eyed. I saw the madness in her eyes, the desperation of a woman cornered by her own greed. I picked up the pen again. Okay, I whispered, my voice breaking. I will sign. I signed my name. But I did not sign Celeste Vance. I signed a name that looked like a scribble to them, but was actually the name of my father's favorite fictional detective, Sherlock. Good? Lydia snapped, snatching the papers away without checking the signature. She handed them to Stone. File these immediately and get the car ready. We are taking Mia to the clinic, and then we are dropping Celeste off at the facility. My heart stopped. Wait, I said, forgetting to act drugged for a second. You are taking me now. Plans change. Lydia smiled cruelly. Why wait until Wednesday? The sooner you are gone, the sooner I can breathe. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my chest. This was not the plan. I was supposed to have 2 days to get the footage to the authorities. If they took me to the facility now, I would be sedated and locked away before I could upload anything. I was trapped. I stood up, swaying. Can I? Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than. Can I say goodbye to Mia first? She is already in the car, Lydia said, checking her reflection in the mirror. You can wave to her as we drive past the clinic. I was escorted out of the house by the security guards. The sky had finally opened up, and rain was pouring down in sheets, soaking my dress instantly. I was shoved into the back of a black sports utility vehicle. Lydia and Stone got into the front. As the car pulled away from the estate, I looked back at the house that had been my sanctuary and was now my prison. I touched the pocket of my dress. My phone was there, recording audio, but it was useless if I could not send the files. We drove for 20 minutes in silence. Then, the car slowed down. We were in a rundown industrial park in the Bronx. The sign on the brick building read East River Medical Supplies, but the windows were blacked out. "That is it," Stone said, pointing to a side entrance. I saw another car parked there. Mia was standing in the rain, shivering, with Greta holding an umbrella over her. She looked small and defenseless. Lydia rolled down the window. "Get her inside, Greta," Lydia shouted over the rain. "The doctor is waiting." Mia looked up. She saw me in the car. Her eyes were filled with terror, but she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She tapped her collar. She had the confession. But as I watched Greta shove Mia through the metal door, a realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Lydia was not dropping me off at a facility. Stone turned the car down a dirt road that led toward the river. There were no hospitals here. There were only abandoned warehouses and the dark, churning water of the East River. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice losing all traces of the act. "This is not the way to upstate." Lydia turned around in the passenger seat. She was holding a syringe. "Oh, Celeste," she said, looking genuinely disappointed. "You really are smarter than you look. The facility is expensive. And honestly, you are much more valuable to me as a tragic suicide victim than a patient." She uncapped the needle. "We are just going for a little walk by the water. Darling, it will all be over soon." I looked at the locked doors. I looked at the needle. I looked at the dark water approaching through the windshield. My plan had worked too well. I had pushed her into a corner, and now she was going to kill me. The rain lashed against the windows of the sports utility vehicle like 1,000 tiny hammers, drowning out the sound of my own heartbeat. Outside, the East River was a black, churning void, hungry and cold. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet leather and impending death. Lydia held the syringe with a casual grace, as if it were a glass of champagne. Her eyes were devoid of any familial warmth. They were flat, shark-like discs reflecting the dashboard lights. "It is better this way, Celeste," she said, her voice eerily calm. "A tragic end for a tragic girl. The public will weep. They love a good tragedy." Stone parked the car near the edge of a rotting wooden pier. The headlights cut through the downpour, illuminating the skeletal remains of an old crane. He turned off the engine, plunging us into near darkness. "Hold her arms." "A Stone," Lydia commanded. Stone reached into the back seat, his hands sweaty and strong. He grabbed my wrists, pinning them against the leather. I did not scream. Screaming was a waste of oxygen. Instead, I let my body go limp, a trick I had practiced 100 times in my head. Dead weight is harder to handle than a fighting animal. Stone struggled to get a better grip. "She is slippery," he grunted. "Just hold her still," Lydia snapped, leaning over the center console, the needle glinting in the dim light. As the needle inching toward my neck, I made my move. I slammed my head backward, smashing it into Stone's nose. There was a sickening crunch of cartilage, and he howled in pain, releasing my wrist to clutch his face. Blood spurted from between his fingers. In the chaos, I kicked the syringe out of Lydia's hand. It flew into the darkness of the footwell. "You little bitch," Lydia shrieked, lunging at me with clawed hands. I did not wait. I scrambled for the door handle, praying the child lock was not engaged. It clicked open, I threw myself out into the pouring rain, hitting the muddy ground hard. I rolled, mud filling my mouth, and scrambled to my feet. Get her, Lydia screamed from inside the car. Kill her. I ran toward the only cover available, the rusting maze of shipping containers stacked near the warehouse. My gray dress was soaked, heavy, clinging to my legs like lead weights. I could hear Stone's heavy footsteps splashing in the mud behind me, his breath ragged and angry. I ducked behind a blue container, pressing my back against the cold metal. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It was wet, but the screen flickered to life. No signal. Of course, I heard Stone cursing nearby. Where are you, you little rat? I needed a weapon. I scanned the ground. A rusted iron pipe lay half buried in the mud. I pried it loose, the jagged metal biting into my palm. It was heavy, brutal, and real. Celeste, Lydia's voice echoed through the yard. She sounded unhinged. Come out, darling. Do not make this harder than it has to be. I moved deeper into the maze. I needed to circle back. I needed to get to the main road. But as I turned a corner, a hand shot out and grabbed my hair. I screamed as I was yanked backward. Stone slammed me against the side of a container, his face a mask of blood and fury. You broke my nose, he snarled, raising a fist. I swung the pipe with every ounce of strength I had left. It connected with his kneecap with a dull thud. He roared, his leg buckling under him. He collapsed into the mud, clutching his knee. I did not stop to look. I ran, but I was not running toward the road anymore. I saw headlights approaching. Not one car, 3. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every second. Mia? I thought, a surge of hope flooding my chest. The cars screeched to a halt at the entrance of the pier, blocking the sports utility vehicle. Red and blue lights exploded in the darkness, painting the rain-slicked ground in chaotic flashes of color. Police! Drop your weapons. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. I collapsed onto my knees, the iron pipe slipping from my hand. I watched as armed officers swarmed the area. They pulled a screaming Lydia out of the sports utility vehicle. She was kicking and spitting, her perfect hair plastered to her skull, looking like a banshee. Stone, groaning in the mud, was handcuffed where he lay. And then, from the back of the lead police cruiser, a figure emerged. It was Mia. She was still wearing the jacket with the camera. She ran toward me, ignoring the police shouting at her to stay back. Celeste, she cried, throwing her arms around me. We fell into the mud together, sobbing, holding on to each other as if we were the only solid things in a dissolving world. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than I did it. Mia choked out. I got the recording. I uploaded it from the clinic bathroom. The doctor, Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than he tried to stop me. But I ran. I called 911. I looked at my cousin. She was not weak. She was a warrior. We watched as the police dragged Lydia past us. She stopped when she saw us, her eyes wild. I did this for you, she screamed, her voice cracking. Ungrateful wretches. You are nothing without me. Nothing. I stood up, pulling Mia with me. I walked over to where the officers were holding her. I looked my aunt in the eye. The rain washed away the mud on my face, but it could not wash away the contempt in my gaze. We are Vances, Aunt Lydia, I said, my voice cutting through the storm. And Vances do not need parasites. The officer shoved her into the back of the cruiser. As the door slammed shut, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a weight I had carried since the day my parents died. But the night was not over. The police captain approached us, a grim expression on his face. "Miss Vance, we have the footage from your cousin, and we found the recording device in your aunt's office. It is all over, but we need to take you to the hospital. You have been drugged." I nodded. "I am fine," I said, though my legs were trembling. "Just so you ting howling. 2 hashes greater than keep her away from us." As the ambulance arrived, I looked at the dark water of the East River. It had almost been my grave. Now, it was just water. We sat in the back of the ambulance, wrapped in thermal blankets. Mia held my hand tight. "Did we win?" she asked softly. I looked at the flashing lights reflecting in her eyes. "We survived." "Mia," I said, "winning comes later." And I meant it. Survival was just the first step. The real battle, the battle for justice, for our name, and for our future, was just beginning. The courts would be a war zone, and Lydia would not go down without a fight. But looking at the steel in Mia's eyes, and feeling the cold rage still burning in my own gut, I knew one thing for certain. We were ready. The scandal broke like a dam bursting, flooding every news channel, tabloid, and social media feed in the country. The video of Lydia confessing to her crimes, captured by the button camera on Mia's jacket, went viral within hours of her arrest. It was played on loop. The elegant Lydia Vance, face distorted by greed, admitting to poisoning her niece and planning to sell her daughter. The Vance name, once synonymous with philanthropy and old money dignity, was now a hashtag for horror. Hashtag Vance House of Horrors trended on Twitter for 3 days straight. I sat in the living room of the estate, watching the news on the 60-inch television. The house was quiet now. The staff Lydia had hired, Greta and her cronies, were gone, taken in for questioning as accomplices. Mrs. Higgins was back in the kitchen, humming softly as she made tea, her presence a warm balm on the cold, empty house. Mia sat beside me, scrolling through her phone. She looked different. She had cut her hair short, a sharp bob that framed her face, and she was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not the restrictive, unflattering clothes Lydia had forced on her. "They are calling her the mommy dearest of the Hamptons," Mia said, her voice devoid of emotion. "People are digging up old photos of us. They are analyzing my weight fluctuations. They are saying I look like a hostage victim. Do not read the comments." "Mia," I said gently, taking the phone from her hand and turning it face down. "The court of public opinion does not matter. The only court that matters is the one we walk into tomorrow." The next morning, the courthouse was a circus. Reporters swarmed the steps like ants on a dropped lollipop. Flashbulbs popped in a blinding strobe as our car pulled up. I stepped out first. I wore a black suit, sharp and tailored. No more pastels, no more oversized dresses. I wore my hair pulled back, revealing my face, my scars, my truth. Mia followed, head held high, holding my hand inside. The courtroom was packed. Lydia sat at the defense table. She looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit, stripped of her designer armor. Her hair was gray at the roots, her skin sallow without her expensive creams, but her eyes were still the same. In a sight too, angry, calculating. Stone was there too, his nose bandaged, his leg in a cast. He refused to look at us. The proceedings were brutal. The prosecution played the videos. The courtroom gasped as they watched Lydia mix the sedatives into my juice. They recoiled as they heard the audio of her negotiating Mia's marriage to Sterling. But the worst part was when Lydia took the stand. She had insisted on testifying against her public defender's advice. She believed she could charm the jury, just as she had charmed the Hamptons elite for decades. She sat in the witness box, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. "I only did what I had to do," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "My brother left the company in shambles. Celeste was unstable. She was going to ruin everything. I was trying to save the family legacy. And Mia? Xiao Ting Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than Mia needed a husband to take care of her. She is not capable of surviving on her own." The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Keller, stood up. "Ms. Vance, did you or did you not forge medical documents to have your niece declared insane?" Lydia's mask slipped. It was for her own good. She needed structure. "Did you or did you not embezzle $7 million from the trust fund to pay for your gambling debts?" Lydia's face turned red. "It was a loan. I was going to pay it back once the resort deal went through." "And did you intend to kill Celeste Vance by injecting her with a lethal dose of insulin on the night of your arrest?" Silence fell over the room. Lydia looked at me. I did not look away. I stared right into her soul. She smiled. A cold, chilling smile. She was better off dead. Lydia spat, her voice dripping with venom. "She is weak. She is pathetic, just like her father." I did them a favor. The jury gasped. The judge banged his gavel. That was the nail in the coffin. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, including attempted murder, embezzlement, and human trafficking conspiracy. Lydia did not cry. She screamed. She lunged toward our table, restrained by 2 bailiffs. "You ungrateful little witch," she shrieked, her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "I made you. You are nothing without me. You will rot in this house alone." I watched as they dragged her away, her screams echoing down the hallway. I felt nothing. No triumph, no joy, just a hollow, quiet relief. We walked out of the courthouse into the blinding sunlight. The reporters shouted questions, thrusting microphones in our faces. "Celeste, how do you feel? Mia, do you forgive your mother? What will happen to the fortune?" I stopped at the top of the stairs. I looked at the sea of hungry faces. I leaned into the nearest microphone. My aunt wanted perfection. I said, my voice steady and cold. She wanted a story. Well, she got one. But this is not her story anymore. It is ours, and the Vance family is under new management. I turned and walked down the stairs, Mia beside me. We did not look back. The cameras clicked, capturing the image of 2 survivors walking away from the wreckage, not as victims, but as queens of a burning kingdom. The world watched us leave, hungry for more drama. But the drama was over. Now came the silence, and silence, I was beginning to learn, was the loudest thing of all. The judge sentenced Lydia Vance to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. 15 years for embezzlement, 15 years for child endangerment, 15 years for attempted murder. The numbers sounded heavy when read aloud in the courtroom, but to me, they felt light. How could 15 years of sitting in a cell equate to the lifetime of trauma she had inflicted on us? There was no mathematical formula for justice. I realized there was only the law, and the law was a cold, unfeeling machine. I did not visit her before they transferred her. I did not send a letter. I simply signed the paperwork that the new district attorney presented to me, reclaiming my assets, my trust fund, and the deed to the house. It was over. The witch was dead, or at least buried behind concrete and steel, but the castle she left behind was haunted. 3 days after the sentencing, Mia came to my room. Her suitcases were packed, standing like soldiers by the door. She looked healthier than she had in years, the color returning to her cheeks, but her eyes were sad. "I cannot stay here, Celeste," she said softly. "Every room reminds me of her. Every time I walk past the kitchen, I smell that celery juice. Every time I look at the pool, I hear her calling me fat." I sat on the edge of my bed, nodding slowly. I understood. This house was a mausoleum of our pain. "Where will you go?" I asked. "California," she replied. "I got into a small liberal arts college near the coast. I want to study art. I want to paint things that are messy and real." I reached into my nightstand and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $2 million. I had instructed the bank to draw it up that morning. "Take this," I said, holding it out to her. Mia recoiled. "Celeste, no, I do not want the money. That money is cursed." "It is what made her crazy. It is not cursed." "Mia," I said firmly, pressing the envelope into her hand. "It is just paper. It is freedom. Use it to pay for school. Use it to buy a studio. Use it to never have to depend on anyone ever again. Please, for me." Mia took the envelope, tears spilling down her cheeks. She hugged me, holding on tight, as if she were afraid that letting go would mean losing me forever. "Come with me," she whispered into my ear. "Sell this place. We can start over." I pulled away gently. I could not go. Not yet. I had unfinished business. I had an empire to clean up. I have to stay. "Mia, someone has to make sure this never happens again." I watched her taxi drive away down the long, winding driveway until it was just a speck in the distance. When it disappeared, the silence that descended on the estate was absolute. It was not peaceful. It was deafening. The next week was a blur of terminations. I fired every single staff member Lydia had hired. The gardeners, the maids, the drivers. I did not care if they were complicit or just ignorant. If Lydia had touched their lives, I wanted them out of mine. I wrote them generous severance checks, handed them non-disclosure agreements, and watched them leave. I walked through the empty halls of the mansion. It smelled of lemon polish and stale air. I went into the dining room, where the long mahogany table stretched out like a coffin lid. I sat at the head of the table, my father's seat. I was 19 years old. I was worth $50 million, and I had never felt more alone in my entire life. I drove into the city to the headquarters of Vance Enterprises, the board of directors, a group of gray-haired men who had allowed Lydia to run unchecked, looked at me with skepticism as I walked into the conference room. I was wearing a black dress, simple and severe. I did not smile. "The casino project is dead," I announced, throwing the rolled-up blueprints onto the table. "We are donating the land to the Nature Conservancy, as my father intended, and we are launching an internal audit of every department. If I find 1 cent missing, I will prosecute." Mr. Sterling, the chairman, cleared his throat. "Miss Vance, with all due respect, these are emotional decisions. The casino would have been highly profitable." I looked at him. I channeled every ounce of the cold, hard rage that Lydia had cultivated in me. "Do not talk to me about profit, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice low and dangerous. My aunt tried to sell her own daughter to cover the losses from your projected profits. If you have a problem with my leadership, you can resign. In fact, I encourage it. The room went silent, one by one. They nodded. They saw the change. The fragile girl was gone. In her place was a woman forged in fire. That night, I returned to the empty house. I went down to the basement, to my father's study. I sat in his chair and looked at the empty desk. The red folder was gone, taken as evidence. The blue, 5 years is a long time in the business world, but it is an eternity in a federal prison. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of my office on the 45th floor of the Vance Tower in Manhattan. I was 24 years old now. My net worth had tripled since I took over the company. I had ruthless efficiency, a sharp eye for weakness, and a heart that had been tempered into steel. My assistant, a young man who was terrified of me, buzzed the intercom. "Miss Vance, your car is ready." I checked my reflection in the glass. My hair was cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob. My suit was tailored perfectly to my frame. I was thin, fit, and undeniably beautiful. I was exactly what Aunt Lydia had always wanted me to be. I took the elevator down. The drive to the correctional facility in upstate New York took 2 hours. I spent the time reviewing quarterly reports. I did not feel nervous. I did not feel angry. I felt like I was going to inspect a failing warehouse. The prison was gray and depressing, surrounded by barbed wire that glittered in the winter sun. The guards recognized me. They treated me with a deference that bordered on fear. Money had that effect on people. I sat in the visitation room. It smelled of industrial cleaner and stale sweat. On the other side of the glass partition, a door opened. Lydia shuffled in. The shock was almost physical. The woman who sat down opposite me was a stranger. Her hair, once dyed a rich chestnut, was now a stringy, uneven gray. Her skin, deprived of her Swiss treatments, hung loosely on her face, mapped with deep lines of bitterness. She looked 20 years older than her actual age. She picked up the phone. Her hands were shaking. "Celeste," she rasped. Her voice was thin and reedy. "You came." I picked up the receiver on my side. I looked at her with a calm, detached curiosity. "Hello, Lydia." She leaned closer to the glass, her eyes darting around nervously. "I knew you would come. I knew you would not abandon family. Celeste, you have to help me. It is hell in here. The food, Saoyu Hao Ling, 2 hashes greater than it is making me sick. And the other women, Saoyu Hao Ling, 2 hashes greater than they steal my things. I need money for the commissary. I need you to appeal my sentence." She paused, trying to summon a ghost of her old charm. She tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. "I heard about the company. You are doing so well. I am so proud of you. I taught you everything you know. Did I not? We are the same. You and I listened to her beg. I watched her degrade herself. This was the woman who had called me fat. This was the woman who had tried to kill me. This was the woman who had treated human beings like chess pieces. I am not like you." "Lydia," I said softly, "I earned my place. You stole yours." Her face fell. Her eyes narrowed, the old malice flickering briefly. "Then why are you here? To gloat? To laugh at me?" "No," I said. "I came to give you something." I reached into my designer bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I pressed it against the glass so she could read it. Lydia squinted. It was a menu I had typed up that morning. Breakfast, warm water with lemon. Lunch, Pure organic celery juice. No fiber. Dinner. Air. It was the exact regimen she had forced on me 5 years ago. You are looking a little bloated. Aunt Lydia, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Your face is puffy. It must be the prison food. I have arranged with the warden to have you placed on a special dietary plan. For your health, of course. Lydia's eyes widened in horror. She slammed her hand against the glass. No, you cannot do this. I will starve. Hunger is just fat leaving the body. I quoted her own words back to her. I hung up the phone. Lydia began to scream. She clawed at the glass, her mouth moving in silent shrieks of rage and desperation as the guards moved in to drag her away. She looked like a wild animal. She looked pathetic. I stood up, smoothing the invisible wrinkles on my suit. I turned and walked out of the room, her screams fading behind the heavy metal door. The ride back to the city was quiet. I watched the skyline approach, the tall buildings scratching the sky. I thought about Mia, who was living in a small cottage in Santa Barbara, painting landscapes and falling in love with a kind man who had no money. She was happy. She was messy. She was free. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My makeup was flawless. My bank account was overflowing. My empire was secure. I had destroyed the monster. But in doing so, I had carved out pieces of my own humanity. I was not the scared little girl anymore. I was powerful. I was untouchable. I was perfect. And as the city lights swallowed the car, I realized that perfection was the loneliest place on earth.